You've just joined the Prepper Broadcasting Network, where we promote self-reliance and independence. The views and opinions expressed are strictly those of the host or their guests. Visit us in the interactive chat room at prepperbroadcasting.com.
Bankland, Federation of Bankland, the Republic of Bankland, United States of Bankland, United Kingdom of Bankland. Parasite, a smart parasite, a real smart parasite, keeps its host alive. Times are bad and times are hard, and minus cash my way is barred and treated like some retard strapped to a suicide credit card. Mr. Banker, can't you see?
Welcome everyone, this is Tom with Galt Strike. You probably remember me from American Preppers Network. I'd like to thank you for joining our show tonight. This is our premiere episode of Galt Strike, which is our weekly libertarian talk show where we're going to discuss not just the problems of today, but also possible solutions to those problems. But before we get started in today's show, I'd like to mention, if you have questions or comments during tonight's broadcast, the calling number to get on the air is 1-347-202-0228. And after you connected, remember to press 1 so our producer will know that you want to be on the air. Anyway, I'd like to introduce our co-host for tonight, Bobby Akart from Freedom Preppers, and also the author of the Boston Brahmin series. He'll be helping me co-host this show tonight as we talk to some of our guests. Bobby, tell a little bit about yourself and about Freedom Preppers and your talk show.
I will, Tom, and listen, thank you for honoring me with the opportunity to co-host this show with you this evening. For those regular listeners over on Blog Talk Radio, you are probably familiar with the Prepping for Tomorrow program, which airs on Thursday nights, and for the last 2 weeks, Tom has joined me as we talk about prepping in politics. And real excited to join you this evening. You know, when we started Freedom Preppers, we had a vision similar to what you had with American Preppers Network, which was to lead as many people and families to living a preparedness lifestyle as we could. And then I took it one step further and began writing prepper-oriented fiction and my new nonfiction series called Prepping for Tomorrow. And all of that has really led to you and I becoming very good friends, and I'm honored to call you a friend. And one thing that we both share is a love of politics, and we both recognize how important it is that folks who are in the preparedness community and otherwise know the issues, and so they can make a good decision when they hit that ballot box.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for coming on, Bobby. It's a big help to me. I know, the topics that we discuss is right in line with your viewpoints as being a libertarian. As I discussed on your show with you, not a whole lot of people are libertarians in this country. I think most people are either Democrat or Republican. Maybe they don't belong to a party. But what I found is that most Democrats and most Republicans, if you ask them, well, why are you a Democrat or why are you a Republican? Most of them, their answer is, well, I grew up that way. That my parents were Republicans, so I'm a Republican. The thing that sets libertarians apart is, I've never heard in my life anyone who is a libertarian because their parents were a libertarian. It's just one of those things that you become later on once you learn about the issues and and really decide, is this for me? Is this what I am? And, and I grew up in a family that was Republicans, and so I started out as a Republican. But as I learned other things, I realized that some issues really don't matter to me. I could care less about what people do with their personal lives. I can care what they want to do with their bodies, whatever. What I care about are the freedoms that personally affect me. I care about other people's freedoms as well. If you want to, if you enjoy drinking alcohol at night, if you enjoy smoking tobacco or whatever it is you like to smoke, I really don't care. That's up to you. That's your freedom. That's your issue. So I want you to respect my freedoms, like owning a gun, freedom from income taxes and freedom to own my property. I want you to respect my freedom. So, I kind of have to give something back and say, hey, I'm going to respect you for your freedoms too at the same time. And a lot of these things that libertarians support, we don't really necessarily do those things. They're just not issues to us. Our issues is having rights and freedoms. And so that's what this show is going to be all about. We're going to be talking a lot about, finances, personal finances, debt, building wealth, protecting your wealth, because I think one of the things that libertarians really understand is being an issue of freedom is our right to do business and accumulate wealth however we do it, and then keep that. That's our time. That as a libertarian, I don't think of money as dollar bills. I think of money as my time that I invested into producing something. That's a representation of my time, and my time I do value. I think my time is really important to me, and I believe it's important to everybody. And so I think that's a big part of being a libertarian. It's a big part of our website, Galt Strike. But anyway, before we get started, I want to mention it. If you're listening to the show on Blog Talk or any other website that has the player, you can also join the chat room. And so I encourage you to join the chat room. You go to prepperbroadcasting.com, and there's a little chat box down below. You can put in your name and then click connect. But before we get started, before we take any callers, there are a few ground rules for the show that I want to get across, just so you know that we are live on the air, that there's no foul language allowed. If you curse, you'll be taken off the air or removed from the chat room. There shall be no hate speech. If you wouldn't want something to be said about you or your group, then don't say it about others. Basically, use the golden rule. Be civil. This is a family-friendly show. You can feel free, if you come on the air, feel free to give a short plug about your website, a book that you've written, a business that you own, that's fine. But don't use this as an opportunity to advertise, and give a big long spiel about your business. Just, give a quick plug about your business, your website address, and what you do. We're happy to share that. Also, I want everyone to know that it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, a Republican, a conservative, liberal, or independent. Feel free to call in with your opinions. It's okay if you disagree with another caller or the host. However, the focus of this show is less about debating and more about providing solutions. So state your disagreement and why you disagree briefly, and then offer possible tips, ideas, and solutions to the problem. That's what this show is about coming up with solutions. Lastly, the ideas and opinions on this show are not to be taken as professional advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a stockbroker. And I'm sure most of our callers probably aren't either. So if you hear an idea from a host or a caller that you would like to apply to your own situation, we recommend you seek advice from a professional in regards to how those ideas might benefit you in your situation. We might have a great idea about investing, but, when you go talk to your financial advisor, he may say, hey, that's a good idea, but you should do it in this way instead of the way they mentioned. So the topics we discuss, they're just ideas. They're ideas and opinions that hopefully you can take those ideas and expand upon them. Anyway, the topic of discussion tonight, we're going to talk about democratic socialism, college tuition, and student debt. As I said before, feel free to call in at any time to chime in. The number to call in is 1-347-202-0228, and then dial 1 to talk to either myself or Bobby. Anything you want to mention before we get started, Bobby?
Well, no, I think that you've laid it out very nicely, Tom, and I believe that one of the goals of galtstrike.com and this program is to help people identify issues that are the most important. I mean, if you start to make a list of all of the political issues that are discussed amongst friends or on social media or that you see on news stations, there could be dozens of various issues that are important to somebody. But in reality, each of us has a group of core principles that we live by, and a group of core issues that we find to be most important. And a particular candidate is never going to be a one-size-fits-all politician that's made, perfectly made for you. So you have to decide which issues are of most importance to you, and then find the candidate that fits that need. And I believe your goal, what you have designed there at Gold Strike in this program, will help your listeners identify those most important issues so that they can make an informed decision. And I give you a lot of props for that.
Yeah, thank you, and I really appreciate your support. So let's go ahead and get into the topic we're going to discuss, and maybe some callers might want to jump in and give their opinion. Also, if you're in the chat room, feel free to drop your opinion there as well. So we're going to be discussing democratic socialism and mostly college tuition and student debt. As I watched over this election and leading up to this election, the explosive growth in the democratic socialism movement, especially with the support behind guys like Bernie Sanders. And I think the biggest driving force behind that movement is the skyrocketing cost of college tuition and the amount of student debt that there is. And so we can, debate all day long about how bad democratic socialism, why we disagree with Bernie Sanders. But I don't think that's going to solve any problems. I think we need to get to the root of this problem, and I think the biggest one right now to talk about is college tuition and student debt. And so I think I've got some ideas to throw out there to help students get into college, how they can do it without building debt, and how they can do it without using the government's help, without getting a grant or a loan of any sort. I think if we can solve that problem, then I think we can really, slow down the spread of the socialist movement. Because to me, I want to keep what I've earned. I didn't, I'm going to say straight up, I only spent a couple of years in college. I found my success elsewhere. And I don't mind if other people want to go to college. I think that's great. I think that's awesome. I applaud that effort. And I really want to be supportive of other people that choose to go to college, but I don't want to be the one to pay for their college. I don't want to pay for it through taxes. I don't want to pay through it through, other fees and things, because I made my choice about how I'm going to, go about my own success. So why should I pay for someone else's success? Personally, I come from the belief that it's better to teach a man how to fish than to give a man a fish. If you give a man a fish, he's going to be there the next day for another fish, and the next day for another fish, and the next day, and he's not going to ever learn how to do, catch his fish on his own. So I'd rather teach a man how to fish. And, I'm hoping we can do that with some of the ideas that people bring up, and some of the ideas that I offer. Hopefully we can teach some people how to fish, and in this instance, how to get into college without taking out a big loan. To me, socialism is a pretty scary thing. I don't want to live in a society that could end up like North Korea or like Cuba or like Venezuela or even France. I really don't want to be like France, and I don't want to be like Denmark. I don't want to be like Sweden. I don't want 50% of my wealth being taken away. I work really hard for that. I'd like to keep it all if I could. So socialism is a very scary thing to me, and I don't believe the word democratic doesn't change at all what it is. Basically, that's telling me that other people are voting to take away my time. Like I said, money is time, time is money, they're interchangeable, and so when you're taking away my wealth, you're taking away my time. I think I can help you be more productive by giving you some good ideas on how you can do it on your own without using the government to tax us. I also believe that if people don't earn something on their own, they don't really appreciate it as much. And some examples are, look at rental homes. Do renters really take good care of the property that they're renting? And that's when they've got a financial interest in the house. A deposit they put down, and they still don't take very good care of it. That I don't say that about all renters, but a lot. That's the one of the biggest worries that a landlord has is how well the renters are taking care of their property. And then when it comes free or really cheap, like HUD housing, people really don't take care of the HUD housing at all. And, they're expecting the landlord to do everything for that HUD housing. Well, the landlord isn't getting paid very much from the government on that home. And if the government's providing the money for it, then the people just aren't taking care of it. It gets trashed. Healthcare is another example. If you're getting free healthcare, if the government's taking care of it, then you're a lot less likely to take care of your own body and your own health and get out there and exercise and eat healthy and everything because, hey, why do you got to do that? The doctor will give you the pills that you need. The doctor will give you the surgery that you need. Why take care of your body? But I think, if you look at people that pay for their own health care 100%, they're a little bit more healthier than the rest of the people, and that's because they've got a vested interest in that. I want to give another example. What if the government started giving, vouchers out to people to buy a car? Are people going to take care of that car? And also, I want to point out that providing this free stuff that that people think is free, which really isn't, that drives up the cost of those things. And I want to use healthcare for example. So the government's going to subsidize part of that healthcare. What's the the hospitals and everything? What are they going to do? They're going to raise their rates. The insurance companies are going to raise their rates because they know the government's covering that part, so they can raise their rates a little bit more. Imagine if the government started giving out vouchers to buy cars. Let's say give everybody a $5,000 voucher. And you go to the dealership, do you think that $10,000 car is going to still be $10,000? No, it's going to be $15,000 because they know that they're still going to get the $10,000 out of you some way or another through financing or whatever. But they're guaranteed they're going to get that money from the government, so they're going to raise their prices. And this is the same thing with college tuition. I think one of the biggest driving forces behind making college tuition so expensive is two things. It's the easy availability of credit, and it's also the government subsidizing that education. Because, hey, if the government's paying for part of it, those schools, they're going to raise their rates. They're going to raise their rates because they know they're going to get that, and then hopefully they'll get something from you too. And then you add in loans, a college loan to get, that tuition. Then as a student, you're looking at what's it cost per month rather than what the total cost is going to be. You're looking at that cost per month. And so you're working and getting that weekly or monthly paycheck, and that's what you're basing that cost of that tuition on, is what it's going to cost you by the month or by the week. And so I think that, when they, get that loan, when that loan money comes in, then the college is like, hey, we can raise our rates more because these guys are paying it spread out over decades instead of, a few short years. So I think between the loans and the government subsidies, that's driving the cost through the roof. If we could do away with those things, if people had to pay up front for their college, I think the prices of tuition would plummet because people wouldn't be able to afford it with the government loan because they wouldn't have that government loan, and they wouldn't have the government subsidies and the government grants. So the schools would have to lower their price. It's market demand. It's supply and demand. The demand's there, but the price would be too high. People couldn't afford it, so the tuition would come down. So I believe those are the ways that cause tuition to be, not the only factors, but I think a couple of the biggest factors that cause tuition to be so high. I think if people paid for it themselves, that it'd be a lot cheaper. But even as high as it is now, if we can't ever get the price down, I think it's still possible for college students to get in a school that they want without the government loan and without the debt, even as high as it is right now. And we're going to discuss that in a minute. Is there anything you want to add to this, Bobby?
Well, actually, yes, thank you, Tom. And in preparation for tonight's program, I actually did some research and found a website called the College Board or collegeboard.org to kind of study tuition and fees, room and board, et cetera, over the past 40 years. And they had some very interesting charts, which also included the amount of debt that was incurred by students over that same time frame. And what you'll find, or what I found in these charts, is that beginning in the mid-1980s, which ironically was a couple of years after I got out of law school, and for those of you who have kids in college right now, to put this in perspective, I went to the University of Tennessee to law school, and at the time I paid $325 a semester in the early 1980s, which included my tuition and books. And after that period of time, government loans and student loans began to become popular. And you raised an excellent point, Tom. As the money became available to go to college, the amount of tuition and fees skyrocketed. From 1985 to 1995, according to the College Board website, tuition for public schools for a four-year college more than doubled in that 10-year time frame. And I know that's well beyond the rate of inflation during the same period. But if you also look and compare the rate of increase of tuition to the rate of increase in the amount of debt held by students, that doubled as well. So that over a 10-year period where someone had 50% of students had zero debt, within 10 years they had between $40,000 and $80,000 in student loan debt for an undergraduate degree. So you've made the point very well that this problem came about because of easy money. And just to give folks a little bit of a comparison, think of the late 1990s into the 2000s when money became very easy to borrow to buy real estate. During the mid-2003, 2009 time frame, we lived in Las Vegas and watched homes double in value every year simply because money was easy to borrow. And it created a bubble. And when that bubble burst, the housing market crashed and our economy went in the tank. And there have been many folks who have said that there's a student loan bubble that's every bit as potentially devastating as the housing bubble. And right now it's ready to burst. And I'm sure you're familiar with that too, right, Tom?
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what the point I was trying to make. And, I'm glad you brought up more about the easy availability for credit for purchasing homes. I mean, it's a direct correlation between the easy money and really, I don't think if it's a loan, I don't think of that as easy money at all. A 30-year mortgage, I mean, geez, you're going to be shackled to that thing for 30 years. I'd like to be free in less than 5. I don't want to be chained to a 30-year prison sentence of debt. And so I think that probably the biggest problem is the easy money and the easy availability of credit. And yes, that's just driven up the cost way too much. I want to make a couple of points before we go to our, not our callers, but before we take a break here in about 5 minutes. I want to bring up a couple other things. One of the problems with, let's say we had this, quote unquote free education, and there's no such thing as free. There's always somebody paying for it. But let's say you could, get that college tuition paid for in full for free. Okay, the problem I see with that, one of the problems is there really is no incentive to do adequate market research for that career field to make sure you're going to get a good job after you graduate. I think when you have invested, and that's what it is when you're getting an education, you're investing in that education. When you put up your own money and you invest in it, you're going to make sure not only do you graduate, but you're going to make sure that you've sought out jobs that are high in demand. And that's really what college students should be doing. Before they even go to college, they should be looking at the demand for, the areas that they want to live in and see if that career is, if they're even going to be able to get a job in that career field in the first place. And with the easy tuition, where they can just jump right in, I don't see there being near the amount of incentive to do that. I think what might end up happening is get a lot of students go to college, not work as hard at graduating. Maybe they will, I don't know. But I don't think they're going to focus too much on whether they're going to get a good job afterwards, because they're not investing. They don't have skin in the game. That's the problem. They don't have skin in the game with their own invested money. Also, there's less incentive to succeed in the school. If you don't put up your own money, there's less incentive. Just like anything else, just like the HUD housing or the, rental homes, or like, the idea of a car voucher, or even rental cars. People rent a car and they really don't take good care of that car. And that's why the rental car companies provide the extra insurance, on the car, that, so that you don't have to pay for it yourself when you're, out off-roading and driving in the bushes and stuff. And then the other thing, college isn't for everyone. I think more people going to college, there would be more people going to college that really shouldn't be going to college. And I don't want to just, sway anybody from going to college, but I think, that's just like any other step in life. That's something that you really have to spend time thinking about before you do it, to make sure it's going to be something that you really want to do, that's something that's for you. The other problem I would see with having, the paid, government paid tuition, is that's going to result in nationalizing the colleges. And the problem with nationalization is that results in rationing. And rationing results in eliminations of a lot of choices. So when the government starts paying for it, let's say the government pays for everybody's tuition, you don't have to pay for it anymore. The taxpayers are going to pay for it. Well, the problem is, once the government gets into that, just like anything else that they get into and nationalize, they're going to realize they don't have the funds to do every class that was there before. So they're going to start, cutting away a lot of those classes. Maybe they're classes that you really wanted to learn, and you were willing to put up your own money to do. They're going to be gone because the government's not going to want to fund it anymore. And so I think with nationalized colleges, we wouldn't have near the choices available that we have now. And without those choices, then you're not getting educated in career fields that maybe you might be a good entrepreneur or something, and be able to really make something of yourself in an industry that now you can't because the government took that choice away. So that's another reason why I'm really opposed to government, paying for college tuition. Anyway, we're going to take a few minutes to hear from our sponsors. I want you to think about this while we're waiting for the sponsors, come up with some ideas, because we're going to talk about solutions here in a few minutes. And you'll want to call in. The call-in number is 1-347-202-0228. And then dial 1 to call in. We want to hear your opinions of what you have to say. Maybe you got some tips and ideas on how kids can pay for their students. So we'll take a minute to hear from our sponsors.
Old Dr. Bones here, and I want to know that you're prepared to deal with injuries and illness in any disaster scenario. What would you do if modern medicine was no longer available? The second edition of the Survival Medicine Handbook is over 550 pages of how-to advice for the non-medical professional. Don't forget, Nurse Amy and I have a whole line of medical kits, suture stapling materials, instructional DVDs, and other items that'll help you keep it together even if things fall apart. Check us out at doomandbloom.net.
TheWonderMill.com, the best grain mills on the market, with the ability to mill several items that many grain mills will not. There are 2 grain mills to choose from. The Wonder Mill Electric. It's fast and gives you a vast variety of items it can grind. The Wonder Junior Hand Grain Mill can grind a wide variety of things that even some of the most expensive hand grain mills cannot, including oily grains, nuts, and seeds. Learn more about the most resourceful tool that you may ever own. See all the exciting things that Wonder Mill can do for you and what you eat at thewondermill.com.
We have exciting news. You can now afford to have your own freeze dryer. That's right, for the first time ever, it's possible to have a freeze dryer in your home. It was invented right here in America by Harvest Right. With this new appliance, you can freeze dry your own food and it will last 25 years. Imagine freeze drying fruit, vegetables, meat, and your own homemade meals. It's as easy to use as a microwave. Learn more about this amazing home freeze dryer at harvestright.com. Again, that's harvestright.com.
Where can you find the best in food storage, water purification, heirloom seeds, medical, health, and emergency supplies? LifeReliance.com. What do Mountain House, Legacy Foods, Guardian, Wise Foods, and Relief Foods have in common? LifeReliance.com. Who has the lowest prices, special offers, and free consultation to help you develop an emergency preparedness plan that makes sense for your family? LifeReliance.com. Why would Life Reliance do all this? We are family, owned and operated. Let our family help you and your family be prepared. Visit us at lifereliance.com or call 520-425-9771.
Okay, sounds like we're back, everyone. Anyway, so let's get into this. As I mentioned before, feel free to call in anytime. The number to call in is 1-347-202-0228, and then dial 1 to talk to either me or Bobby. Anyway, so as I promised, we're going to talk about solutions. One of the biggest debts that we have in America are student loans. As Bobby mentioned, that's, one of the next major bubbles. So let's say, first off, before we talk about how to get out of debt, let's assume that you're a college-age student, you're 18 years old, or or younger, and you're planning on going to college, and you want to know how can you pay for your tuition, without a government grant or without student loans. Okay. Now, I'm sure there's more than one way to do it. One of the things I really highly recommend people do is listen to Dave Ramsey. He is probably one of the best people that I've ever listened to about getting out of debt and paying off loans, saving money. But an idea that I came up with, I've heard other people talk about this, but I've expanded on the idea. I think is a really great idea. Let's say you're 18 years old. What rule or law is there anywhere that I have ever heard of? I've never heard of a law that says you have to go to school or go to college right after high school. I don't know of any law that says that. No. I think society's been indoctrinated to believe that you graduate from high school and you got to go right into college or university. I don't think there's any rule or law anywhere that says that. So this is a solution that I would propose as a possible solution. Let's say whether you want to be a doctor or an architect or a CPA or a lawyer, this is what I would do. Go to a trade school first that's in the same industry of the major that you want to learn about. Okay? A lot of trade schools can be anywhere from 30 minutes to, 30 days, anywhere from 30 days to 6 months to a year or two, not 4 or 12 years. So you can go to a trade school and in a short amount of time be making good money in the same industry that you're interested in. So, for example, you want to be an architect. Start out as a builder. Go to a trade school and become a builder. Become an electrician. Become a plumber. If you want to be a CPA, start out as a bookkeeper. If you want to be a lawyer, start out as a paralegal. If you want to be a doctor, start out as a nurse. Okay, you can start out as a CNA in a short time, become a CNA, and work your way up and eventually become an RN. Okay, so the reason why I say this is you go to trade school first, and you're out in a short amount of time, and then you're then in a good-paying job. Okay, don't move out of mom and dad's house. Mom and dad, you got to be willing to let your kids stay there at home for, a few more years while they get off on their own feet. Stay at home. Don't get a mortgage and don't get a $500 a month car payment. Just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should. Okay? What you're going to want to do is stay at home for a few more years and pay mom and dad a little bit of rent, because you want to have skin in the game. Pay them a little bit of rent and save your money. Don't get into debt. Save that money every month and invest that money. And the reason is because of compound interest. Just the same way when you take out a 30-year mortgage or a car loan or something else, you're paying the bankers compound interest, and they're getting very rich off you. But you can reverse that and do it the same way in your favor. You can take your money and invest it and get compound interest back to you on your own money. So not only is this money that you're saving up going into your bank account, so is the interest that you earn on that money going into your bank account. And you do that for anywhere between 5 to 10 years, working in an industry that you're interested in, and you're going to have that money to pay for your tuition in full. But not only that, let's say you wanted to be a doctor and go to medical school. If you start out as a nurse, you're going to be working with doctors all day long. You're going to really get a feel of how that industry works. And so when you go, to medical school to become a doctor, you're going to be light years ahead of all the other students. Yeah, you'll be a few years older than them. That's okay. You're going to have more experience than they do, and you're going to be a lot further ahead in the classes. Same thing as an architect. If you want to be an architect and you start out as a builder, you're going to be learning how to read blueprints. You're going to be learning how to work with other builders, with other contractors, with plumbers, with electricians. And so when you go to school to become an architect, you're going to be light years ahead of all the other students in school. Think of it as on-the-job training, but you're getting paid good money because a lot of these trades pay very well. You could be making anywhere from $30 to $40 to $50 an hour in some of these trades. And if you're taking most of that money and saving it, you're going to have that college tuition. And then you go to college, and then when you graduate from college and you get that job as a doctor, or you get that job as a CPA or an architect or a lawyer, you're not going to have that huge debt to pay back anymore. You're going to be ahead of everybody else in your chosen career field. Anyway, before I go on some more, I just got a message from our producer. We've got Red Hawk in queue. Producer, could you bring Red Hawk on?
Hello.
Hello, is this Red Hawk?
Hey, Red Hawk. Is this Tom?
Yes, this is Tom.
Hey, that article is doing pretty good up on Golf Strike we did, huh?
Yeah. Thank you for coming on air, too.
All right, no problem. All right, well, I'm going to start a ways back on what I've got to say here, all right? We're going to go all the way back to 1982, okay? 1982, San Francisco Bay Area, unemployment rate 8.2%, okay? Now, at that time, they did a media blitz, they did advertising, so on and so forth, started going to these trade schools, okay? One of the trade schools was the up-and-coming thing, since it was right close to Silicon Valley there, electronics. Go and learn and become an operator programmer, okay? Trade school, 6 months, $3,800, all right? Now, as I was unemployed, had a wife and a child on the way, okay, I went ahead and took out a small loan. No biggie, okay? Went through the trade school and everything. Got out of the trade school with good grades, flying colors, so on and so forth, all right? Got out into the workforce or searching for a job in my location within a 100-mile radius. And what had happened was all of the trade schools had flooded the market with all of these trade school students that had graduated, okay, into this field, and now nowhere in the area where these people actually resided had employment in that field. Okay? All right, number 1 point I wanted to make on that. Number 2 point, we have in my personal household, one former student graduated, bachelor's degree, had to do it all on loans and so forth, welfare mom, and she got her bachelor's degree in medical administration. Same thing. Big up-and-coming thing. Obamacare comes in a few years ago. Everybody goes, okay, medical field is going to be the up-and-coming thing, so on and so forth. Take out $55,000 worth of loans, and there isn't a job, one in the field available. Okay? I have a stepson. He was homeschooled. He graduated high school at 15 and a half. Okay? Entered university at 15 and a half years old. He is now just getting ready to finish up a bachelor's degree and in game design and programming. Okay? And he's working part-time as a waiter on top of that, contributing into the household. So that covers one of the points you brought up, too, is that he's still living at home, pays $500 a month rent and utilities and groceries, and is putting aside money for a car, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So my solution to all of this, personally, is I say we go all the way back. You look at the time of Dickens, where families would seek out an employer and say, I want my child to be an apprentice with you. Here is a dowry or a payment or whatever. This is your responsibility. Now here's the kid. Dump. Okay? And you go and get more apprenticeships going. You see very few apprenticeships available in corporations and companies anymore. Okay? The system's set up, and you're right, it's set up to where you come out of high school and you're pretty much, it's a given. You're going to go to college. All the jobs require a degree. You got a GED, you're not going to get anything but flipping burgers. And you're not going to get that now because they're all going automated because of the $15 an hour wage hike. Okay? So, you go all the way back to the apprenticeships. You never hear anything about, and this is a national program that we pay taxes for already. You never hear about the Job Corps. Yeah. What about kids that can't get into college or can't get a job or don't come from a family or a home that's got money? There's got to be something to do with them. Put them in the Job Corps, working on the infrastructure, working on the roadways. We've got prisoners out there doing it here in Florida.
Yeah.
I live 30 miles from FSU in Tallahassee. There's at least a dozen schools in that city.
I really do like your idea of apprenticeships. I think that's a very good idea. I'll give an example. Because you're right, a lot of people might think, hey, get into this industry. It's going to be making lots of money. We're going to do good. I went into truck driving. And when I went in, and this was about 17 years ago, before, the big housing bubble and economic crash and all that. I got in there, and they were saying the industry was like 70,000 drivers short. You're going to be making tons of money, be a truck driver. Well, I went to trade school to be a truck driver, and in 30 days I was out, and I was a truck driver, and I was making pretty good money. I mean, even as a student driver, I was making a few $100 a week. And after I did my on-the-job training, I was making $500 a week. That's, pretty good starting out.
I did that out of Knoll, Arkansas, with
and then a few years later, we hit the housing bubble, and people started losing jobs. A lot of these companies started closing up warehouses, and so it's kind of a domino effect that even affected the trucking industry. And
right.
I had a lot of time sitting and waiting for a load, and wasn't getting the load. I wasn't getting the miles. And I even noticed that,
there about things that affect different industries, okay? I got out of the electronics industry some 30 years ago because of outsourcing. I lost a half a dozen jobs in the Silicon Valley to outsourcing to Asia, okay? That's another big problem, okay? The manufacturing jobs we had 30 years ago in this country, okay, are not there anymore. We have, 1 million jobs a year that are being filled in China rather than being filled here out of the high schools. Okay.
Yes.
Another good solution to this too is out of high school, or in the high school. Test these kids out. Test them out. What is their aptitude for? Okay. Here's a trade school for you to go into. Here's a apprenticeship program to go into. No, you need to go into the military. No, and just pigeonhole them.
Yeah.
And go, this is what you want to do. This is what, and put them in it.
To go back to your point about apprenticeships, I went into truck driving, and then when we had the big economic crash and I was losing the miles and not making the money like I used to, I had an apprenticeship to fall back on. When I was 16 years old, I went out and did carpet laying, and I learned that trade. With a carpet layer. I learned how, and he was making it, and this was back in the 80s and 90s, he was making like $300 a day.
During the big housing booms all across the country. I remember I was in construction.
But even still, I had that skill as another trade that I could fall back on.
That's the other thing, and the kids in our high schools are sitting there attached to their iPhones and their laptops and so forth, and watching MTV and whatnot and playing games instead of out there mowing lawns, washing cars, doing yard work for people, so on and so forth. So they're not learning any valuable work ethics or skills at all, early enough on, and then they hit 18 years old. And I used to deal with this in the ministry. I dealt with 50,000 kids a year for 7 years that had not a clue as how to exist and got booted out their household when they turned 18 because they were too much of a pain in the butt to keep around.
Yeah, so, because they're not out there getting the work ethic and the experience, they're not getting those other jobs to fall back on. I had, by the time I got into trucking, I had carpet laying as a backup. I had drywall that I learned as a backup. I had roofing that I had as a backup. I had, framing as a builder. I had 4 or 5 or 6 different, trades that I could as a backup.
At the time you were in the education system, okay, they focused on those kinds of things some 30 years ago, okay? And today they focus primarily on the liberal arts. Okay?
Yeah.
They do. And that's the truth. And socialist indoctrination, socialist, indoctrination ideologies and so forth, but...
So I think
so there's a big difference
really
between
do like...
today and then.
I really do like the idea of having apprenticeships. That's a really good idea. I like the idea of having, going to a trade school, having backups for backups. If one career field falls through, you've got something else to back up.
You still got to have the grunts. You still got to have, like, the Job Corps,
Yes, I think it's good to have that kind of...
They fire breaks. I've seen Job Corps kids out there fighting fires. Manning the Red Cross stands on a huge forest fire. Huh?
Great ways. I think it's about having those redundant backups so that if one fails, you've got the other.
As again, as I said, that particular program, we're already paying tax dollars for it anyway.
Okay.
So why not utilize it and expand it? That program goes all the way back to Roosevelt, does it not?
Anyway, I wanted. We've only got about 9 minutes left. I want to make some room in case any more callers come in, and in case Bobby wants.
I don't want to take up all the time.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for calling in.
All right, thanks, Tom.
So, thank you. So anyway, to sum that up, two really good solutions that I think we talked about is having an apprenticeship, get involved in an apprenticeship, and going to a trade school and learning a trade in the career fields of your choice, but also have other other trades as a backup in case one doesn't work. I also mentioned, ways to get out of debt. Let's say you're a student right now in college and you've got huge debt and you don't know what to do. Let's say you've got a car payment, a $500 a month car payment. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, why did I get this car? I can't afford it. Now I got the student debt and everything else. Okay, for that car, what I would suggest as an idea is do something like drive for Uber. And what you could do, and no, this is not an advertisement for Uber. I just love the service, so I use it. Drive for Uber because for two reasons. One, you're making money on that car now. That car is now an income source, okay? And you could probably make enough to offset the cost of that car, maybe even a little extra money, okay? Also, it's a tax write-off. So now not only are you making money, your car is also now a tax write-off. That's one way. Another way that I like is, what Dave Ramsey preaches a lot about is the envelope method. Every single time you get a paycheck, money, wherever it comes from, is have envelopes, one envelope for each bill that you have. Plan out your budget, and every single dollar you get has a name to it. That dollar has a purpose. You put that dollar in the envelope for the bill that you have, and then take what's left over and put it in savings, okay? Don't go out and blow it. Don't go out and spend it on wasteful things. But put your money for your budget in those envelopes. And then an easy way to pay down debt is to take the smallest debts first. Let's say it's a $50, credit card from a store, merchant account. Pay that off first. Now you've got that money. You just pay towards that debt and pile that up with the rest of the money that you have, and then focus on the next debt. Let's say it's a $200 credit card bill. Pay that one off. Once you pay that one off, then you take that money and you apply it to the next debt, the next bigger debt, and you take out each of these debts, the smallest one first, and working your way up, you'll have more and more money to pay off each debt. And using that system in combination with the envelope method, I think you can pay off a lot of your debts that way, a lot shorter. And it's not just about saving money and getting rid of the debts one at a time. It's also about making money. You're going to want to use every little opportunity, just like Red Hawk talked about, mowing lawns, washing cars, driving for Uber, doing little odd jobs here and there. And every single time you pay off, or every single time you get that extra money, that extra little windfall, wherever it came from, you use that to pay down your debt. Get rid of that debt first, and then once you get rid of that debt, you start putting that money into an interest-bearing account, some sort of investment, mutual fund, whatever. We got 3 minutes left. I think we had a caller earlier that dropped out. If you want to call back in, feel free to call. We got 3 minutes left. Anything you want to add, Bobby?
Well, I just want everyone to notice the rhetoric on the political campaign trail. The solution from our president and Bernie Sanders is to forgive this enormous student debt. They're the opinion that everyone is entitled to a college education as a matter of right, and that's just a bunch of BS. I have found and heard that most students are now holding out, hoping that their student debts would simply be forgiven by the right president, but they don't understand that somebody has to pay for that, and that somebody is we the people, the taxpayers. That is not a solution. It's better to be proactive and don't get in the debt to begin with, and I think that's a great point Tom makes tonight.
Oh, yeah, well, and you know, having other people, the taxpayers, pay that off. You know, it's not just us. It's you, too. You know, you as the student. What good is that college education going to be when you graduate and you can't get a job because the economy is doing so horribly bad because the taxes are so high? What good is that college education when that dream job of being a doctor or a lawyer or CPA or whatever, when you've worked really hard for that and now you're paying 50% or 75% of your income towards you know, in taxes? What good was it to do all that work when you're not going to get to enjoy the fruits of that labor? I really don't think that socialism is a solution. I think being personally responsible and taking care of yourself and saving your money, that is the solution. Even if you don't get into college until you're 25 or 30. No one says you have to go to college at 18 years old. Put it off a few years, but use that time in that few years to build up the skills you need and save the money to get that school. I think you'll find it a lot more rewarding if you do it that way. We got 1 minute left. Any last words you want to say, Bobby, before we cut it off?
I just want to say congratulations on a great premiere episode of Galt Strike on the airwaves, Tom. You're doing a great service to everyone. Certainly appreciate being a part of the program and encourage everyone to go to galtstrike.com often to look at new content. Thanks for having me on, buddy.
Yeah, I want to mention, if you're listening in and you want to continue this discussion on, just go to our last post on facebook.com/galtstrike. That's facebook.com/galtstrike. And jump on there and leave some comments. Real quick, I want to say be sure to tune in to prepperbroadcasting.com every day for live shows. There's rebroadcasts of over 40 other well-known radio shows as well. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bankland, Federation of Bankland, the Republic of Bankland, United States of Bankland, United Kingdom of Bankland. Parasite, a smart parasite, a real smart parasite, keeps its host alive.